So, the certification authority may sign the certificate for Alice. That means, if I am to say to a server that I am say Sharmistha Niyogi, how does the server know? So, I can produce my certificate that see I have passed from Jadavpur University, that is my certificate. So, in the digital world it may be that yes, Sharmistha Niyogi is certified by say Jadavpur University and this is her public key. So, some certification authority is mentioning my public key, so everybody else will believe. Okay. And that certificate again will be signed. That certificate will also be signed, that digital certificate. So, do not you think that how will I believe, because that certificate will be signed by the certification authority. So, I think all of you know somehow know this. So, we are not going into the details. These are different key sharing, key exchange. Okay. So, mutual authentication, how will you do? Okay. So, Alice first is telling that okay, I am Alice, I want to talk with you. Alice and Bob are the they are very important personalities in the security world. You know, they always talk to each other with a third party Kathy standing in between them or something like that. So, Kathy sometimes Kathy sometimes becomes attacker, sometimes she is the key distribution, whatever. So, then Bob will send back some say R1, okay, some key or something like that. Then what will Alice do? Alice will have the key from somebody, the symmetric key between them. This is for symmetric authentication, and if it sends back to Bob not only the encrypted version of R1 along with some R2, okay, then Bob will, if Bob knows the key, then it will send back the encrypted version of R2. And since the key is same in both sides, but how the keys will be same in both sides, we are coming next. Okay. We are seeing that protocol, because you have to know this K, is not it, both for Alice and Bob. Okay. Let us see how to do that, but mutual authentication can be done in this way, very simple. There can be efficient version also, we do not mind. You can put timestamp also. So, we will talk about firstly Needham-Schroeder protocol. I think one protocol will do. So, in Needham-Schroeder protocol, what is done is that it is assumed that there may be some key distribution center, okay, some central authority. So, what Alice does is that Alice contacts the KDC. It simply tells that I am Alice, I want to talk with Bob and N1. N1 are nothing but some random number, they are called nonces. And what does Alice expect? Alice expect that the KDC will generate some symmetric key between Alice and Bob and will send it back. And why? Because Alice has already authenticated herself with the KDC. So, KDC knows both Alice and Bob, that is why, nothing else. KDC knows both Alice and Bob. So, KDC is in a position to give or distribute a key that can be shared by both Alice and Bob. Okay. And how will Alice and KDC communicate? Because they already have a shared key, because they know each other. So, when KDC replies back, it will encrypt the entire information with that symmetric secret key EKA between the KDC and the Alice, and it will have N1 Bob, because Bob is the destination basically, the secret key and the ticket. Ticket means you can see that is just a next phase I can go like that. So, ticket is the encrypted version which only Bob will be able to open, because KDC has encrypted it with KDC and Bob's secret key. So, Alice will never be able to tamper. Okay. So, even if Alice tells the KDC false that I want to talk with Bob, okay, to get some information for Bob, but ultimately it will not be able to do anything, because the KDC has already encrypted that KAB. So, Alice cannot change KAB. So, Alice sent the ticket and another random number to Bob. And you see, interesting thing is that Alice, since now it has the secret key between Alice and Bob, it has only encrypted the number N2, and the ticket is kept the same because Alice cannot open the ticket. So, intention is that Bob will get this, Bob will open the ticket, because Bob has that secret key from KDC and Bob. So, it will open it, and the ticket contains the KAB, that means the key between Alice and Bob with which N2 is encrypted. So, Bob decrypts the ticket to get that secret key between Alice and Bob, and then it decrypts, find N2, and that it has get the N2. So, it simply performs some mathematical operation which Alice always knows that this will come. If Alice has known that N2 into 2 will come, then it will not have accepted this N2 minus 1. Okay. So, Alice must know what is supposed to come, right. So, now Bob sends everything back with their own key. So, the same thing. So, both way, in this way the key is exchanged, but the KDC is involved there, remember, that means some third party is involved here. So, the problems that are with the third party will remain. But this protocol is very widely used, and that with some timestamp and other things. Later on we are not going to this is the basic idea, that is, if you know this, you will be able to explain any other. So, those nonces, they are very much in use in any of the security protocols that you come across. Okay. They are some random numbers, it may be 128 value, negligible chance of being repeated, because it will be say used for some communication and then discarded later on. So, chance of repeating or generating the same random value is quite small. There will be time stamp for synchronization and prediction, sequence number may be there for nonces, okay, and their predictability is of concern, but they may not be predictable in that way, because you do not use many number of nonces in the same communication. That is why nonces will be used only during the handshaking of any communication. Handshaking, you understand, that means the general sense of handshaking, that when I want to introduce myself to you, we handshake and say that I am this, that, just like that. We will do it tomorrow's session, these handshaking protocols and other things. Random numbers, you can use the random number generators, they are all pseudo random numbers, because you may not get repetition with your usage, say with 100 times or something like that, but with many number of times, say millions of times, you may get the sequence back. So, we will now have a look into the Kerberos protocol. It is very old, but it is very effective. So, I thought that you must know about this protocol. It is very interesting also. So, it is a network authentication protocol. So, it allows nodes communicating over a non-secure network to prove their identity to each other, and not only prove their identity, but also the access control. You remember, that means authorization, how much I will get, all these things. So, it is primarily designed for client server, but it also provides mutual authentication. So, Kerberos protocol messages are protected against eavesdropping and replay attacks, all these you know now. So, it builds on symmetric key cryptography and requires a trusted third party, that means just like your key distribution center. Okay. It may optionally use public key cryptography during certain phase of authentication. It is also a free suite of free software published by MIT that implements this protocol. So, you can get it, and it uses that Needham-Schroeder protocol, which that is why I told you about the protocol. So, it uses a key distribution center, and this key distribution center, it can have two logical parts as the authentication server AS and the ticket granting server. Let us see how it works. The KDC maintains the database of keys. This is well understood. Each entity on the network shares a secret key known only to itself and to the KDC. We have already seen this in Needham protocol also, Needham-Schroeder. So, this key serves to prove an entity's identity. Why? Because we are taking the KDC for granted, that means it is a very, very trusted third party. So, we are thinking that since KDC knows Alice, so Alice is the valid user. Since KDC knows Bob, so Bob is a valid user. Okay. For communication between the two entities, the KDC will generate a session key, which they can use to secure their interactions. That means, the session key basically is the symmetric secret key to be shared between the communication partners. The client at first authenticates itself to the authentication server AS. After getting authenticated, the AS gives a ticket to the client. Ticket, you understand, that means if you want to go somewhere, you have to produce a ticket, just like that. All tickets are time stamped. So, this is also important, that there is a validity period. The client then contacts the ticket granting server. Okay. What does it mean? That means, the client has just secured a ticket, it has not already entered into the system. Okay. It has just got authenticated and got a ticket. So, it now contacts the ticket granting server. It uses this ticket to show or prove its identity and then ask for the service. The ticket granting server will ultimately give the service. I mean, how does it allow? It say that okay, you are allowed this service, writes on the ticket, and then the client again has to go to the actual server. If the client is eligible for the service, the TGS will send another ticket to the client. The client then contacts the service server. That means, that I was telling that the TGS will write on the ticket the same thing, it will simply say that yes, you will get service number say N. So, now the client will contact that service server which is giving service number N and show the ticket, both the tickets. It uses this ticket to prove that it has been approved to receive the service. Now, you see, the interesting part here is that just one interesting part is that the client has already authenticated itself, and suppose for the first time it wants service number N, it gets it. After some time, suppose it wants say service number K. Now, the second time it may not have to again authenticate itself, because the first ticket is already there. Tickets are time stamped. So, if it is within that validity period, then I can get the second service also. So, next time when the client is applying for the second service, it simply goes to this TGS. So, this step, last step, okay, and ask that I now want this service number say K, right. So, the client has to authenticate itself only once. I mean, obviously the validity of the time period being provided. So, you see so many messages are being transferred, I mean exchanged between all these entities. So, first step, the login, user enters the username password, the client performs a one way hash function, all these are just I mean the details what is going on in the background on the entered password, and this becomes the secret key of the client server, that is important. Now, client authentication, the client sends a clear text message of the ID to the authentication server. The authentication server generates the secret key by hashing the password of the user found in the database, and it checks whatever the client has now sent, it validates whether the client is in the database if the hashing matches recent hash and stored hash. Hash is a one way function. So, you have to know the original to generate the hash on it. Okay. It is not that you get the hashed one, you dehash it and find the original, not possible, because hash is one way. So, the ACE now sends message A, which is the client TGS session key encrypted using the secret key generated earlier, and message B is the ticket to get ticket, that means my entry to the system, okay, which includes client ID, network address, ticket validity period and client TGS session key encrypted using the secret key of the TGS. Client decrypts message A because already the secret key is with it. With a valid password and secret key of the client, secret key, the client decrypts message A to obtain the TGS session key, because that is important, required client TGS session key, because now it will go to the TGS to show the ticket. Okay. So, it obtains the client TGS session key, and this will further be used for communication with the TGS, because this is what is required even if the client requires the second service, third service and so on. Service authorization, now whether the client will get this service. So, when requesting services, the client sends the following message: message C composed of the ticket granting ticket from message B and the ID of the requested service, service number n, okay, and another message which is the authenticator, that means the client ID and the timestamp encrypted using the client TGS session key. So, let us see what happens. The TGS will receive all these messages. So, what does the TGS do? The TGS retrieves message B out of message C. So, it first reads message C and retrieves message B, because that was simply copied. It decrypts message B, the first one not in this slide. This gives the client TGS session key, because message D is encrypted with client TGS session key. Okay. So, using this key the TGS decrypts message D and sends the following message to the client, that means some sort of acknowledgement sort of thing. So, what it is? Client to server ticket, which includes the client ID, the client network address, etc., and the client server session key, because this is what is required for the service. Okay. So, encrypted using the services secret key, remember, and message F, it is the client server session key encrypted with the client TGS session key, because the client TGS session key is already known to the client. So, it will decrypt message E using message F. So, client service request, upon receiving messages E and F from the TGS, the client has enough information to authenticate itself to the SS. The client connects to the SS and sends the following two messages: message E from the previous step, which has everything regarding the client, remember this one, everything regarding the client, what it wants, what is the session key, what, etc. And message G, a new authenticator which indicates the client ID, timestamp and is encrypted using the client server session key, that means the first one, that means I am really an authenticated server of this client of this system. So, the service server, SS means service server who is providing the service, decrypts the ticket using its own secret key to retrieve the client server session key, as I have already told you. Using the session key, the SS decrypts the authenticator and sends the following message to the client to confirm its true identity and willingness to serve the client. That means, okay, I will provide you with the service. So, it is message H, the timestamp plus 1, okay? Because the time will increase definitely, time is always increasing. So, encrypted using the client server session key. The client decrypts the confirmation using the client server session key and checks whether the timestamp is correctly updated. Okay. Now, I will come ask you one thing later on. If so, then the client can trust the server and can start issuing service requests to the server. The server provides the, this is the normal step. Now, if it is a network, say for example, it is a network, okay, network authentication. So, timestamp, how do you think timestamps will be implemented? Because I am giving you an example, suppose I am sitting in India, you are sitting in London, somebody is sitting in America. So, what time it will be? So, obviously, the drawbacks are single point of failure, time synchronization requirements. Okay. I am simply saying one thing with respect to this is that obviously, in systems like these distributed system, network systems, you do not have a common clock. Okay. So, you have to base your concept of time maybe on some logical concept. What is logical concept? That means very simple, it may be like a counter, it may be implemented like a counter. When you start the communication, you start with 1. So, whoever is getting the message, obviously the receiver will always be in the higher end of the time. So, plus 1. You are sending message to me, I will give it plus 2. It can be like that. Just like that also it can be implemented, or there are several other implementations of logical time clock, Lamport being the father of this logical time clock synchronization, logical clock synchronization and etcetera. We can use those algorithms also. I think we can just have some brief overview that if we want to have an overall security management system, then what shall be its components, what you may include in it. So, the security system needs to have 3 basic components. Okay. Firstly, specifications or policy that I have already told you. We were discussing policy that if you want to have some security system, then you must know what you do, what you do not do, these are the basics. So, that is policy, defines what the system is supposed to do. And basically, I am for a side shot I am telling that whenever you are telling that the system can do this and can't do this, then that means if it can do this, then it is going to some state, and if it can't do this, it is also going to some state. Okay. So, these states are different, not only different, but they belong to different sets. These are authorized states and these are unauthorized states. Okay. So, in that way also you can validate the system. That means, if you perform this particular activity, in which set the system state is going. Secondly, implementation or mechanism that describes how to achieve the requirements specified in the policy. That we have mentioned that security mechanisms. So, these may be the actual implementations, functions, procedures, and not always they have to be some programs or something. Okay. It may be as simple as say installing some security guard at the entrance of the server room with a lock and key, like that, I mean just for example. Okay. It can be as simple as that. And assurance, that means the process of checking whether the system really meets the security requirements, because without this the users of the system may not be satisfied, that is why. Okay. So, these are required. The management has to develop a security policy and the detailed procedures to implement. Obviously, it is the task of the management, the authorities. Right? However, there may be gaps between the policy and the implementation, because as I have told that may be due to several other reasons. Okay. Maybe you are seeing that if you want to implement some particular policy in the exact format as it is mentioned, then maybe the resources that are required in terms of say cost, I mean time, money, manpower, everything, it may be skyrocketing. Okay. So, obviously, then you have to compromise. So, that means some gaps are there, some gap is now there between the actual implementation and the policy. So, it is a very possible case of threat, it can be identified because there is a loophole. So, any attack can go inside that, right. We will talk about these gaps and analysis in our next class tomorrow. Okay. Security risks should be properly assessed. Risk, that means what are the risks if you do not take such and such security measures. We will discuss this also. Risk mitigation plans must be in place therefore. Okay. So, goals of the security system will be obviously monitoring, because without monitoring you can't detect anything. Reporting, time to time reporting, even if there is nothing, okay, but still you report. Report means you can maintain log also, but you have to ensure that somebody sees the log, say whether at the end of the day or I mean twice in a day, whatever. Raising alarm if and when necessary. Okay. First, but apart from all this, the first and foremost duty is the awareness, because many institutions and organizations do not have the awareness that security is required at all. Everybody is thinking that security is nothing but an additional cost on my overburdened system, because these things do not happen, people tell, but if they happen, how much damage they will cost, they may not have any idea, because they have never calculated it. So, at least you must know the risks. So, what we have? We generally have a desktop system. I am not going into the details. So, desktop system have different vulnerabilities and therefore, different possible protections. Among these, I will only say about intrusion detection systems of the network. Okay. Just very simple idea, nothing else. So, the goal will be to detect attacks, definitely prevent. If attack can be detected, then obviously we will try to prevent it. Detection of the security policy violation, that means how this attack took place, which one is violated. Enforcing acceptable use policy defined in the organization security policy or collection of evidence. That means that I was saying that not all policies may be implemented in the verbatim version, but at least some parameters, some major contents can be taken out of it, which are I mean which can easily be implemented, easily in the sense that means within our effort, time, money, etcetera, etcetera. Okay. So, intrusion detection system is a device or software application that monitors the network or the system for malicious activities, okay, or policy violations. That means, you see it is not that simple. Malicious activities is one thing, policy violation is completely separate thing. That means, the checking will be done in a separate manner for these two activities. Okay. It depends for what activity you want to install the IDS. Okay. Are you very focused on implementing your policy? Then you must check the whether there is any violation in the policy, or you simply want to monitor your network, monitor your device and then get a feedback and etcetera, then you do the other thing, and it produces electronic reports. Obviously, there are network based IDS and host based IDS. Network based IDS are placed at strategic points, obviously, within the network to monitor the traffic to and from all devices on the network. So, what does your Wireshark do? It has the monitoring part only. Okay. It performs an analysis of passing traffic on the entire subnet, okay, and matches the traffic that is passed on the subnets to the library of known attacks. That means if some particular attack has taken place, then what will be the nature of the traffic that is known beforehand. Okay. Suppose there is say DOS attack, so flood. What type of floods? Remember, spoofed packet, Smurf attack, ICMP flood, all these seen floods. So, there is a pattern that these may happen. So, increase in the number of these packets, this type of messages. So, they are already marked. So, that means that matches the traffic that is passed on the subnets to the library of known attacks, and therefore, it is also not possible always that you can detect each and every possible attack with one NIDS. Okay. Obviously, because then the NIDS itself will be so burdened, overburdened rather. Okay. It may not give you the result in correct time frame. Once an attack is identified or abnormal behavior is sensed, the alert can be sent to the administrator. Obviously, no problem. An example of an NIDS would be installing it on the subnet where firewalls are located in order to see if someone is trying to break into the firewall. Because this activity is can be performed more easily, that is why. People target such particular objects in the network, entities in the network. So, if there is a firewall, obviously attacker will try to attack the firewall, because it knows that the firewall is an important entity. You remember, it performs different types of filtering and etcetera. So, obviously, if it can be attacked, then much of the network will go down. So, the IDS may be in the vicinity of the firewall to check the firewall at first, and then the other strategic say positions, say some servers in the network, other small gateways in the network, like that. Okay. And remember, at one place we were telling that intrusion prevention systems will work if the pattern is known. So, that is what is meant by this library of known attacks. That means, if it is already known that this is the pattern of the traffic for this attack, then it will be able to detect that. Signature based intrusion detection. Host intrusion detection system runs on individual hosts or devices on the network. This monitors the inbound and outbound packets from the device only, and will alert the user or administrator if suspicious activity is detected. Okay. It takes a snapshot of the existing system files and matches it to the previous snapshot. If the critical system files were modified or deleted, an alert is sent to the administrator. Okay. So, an example of the usage can be seen on mission critical machines, which are not expected to change their configurations. So, host based intrusion detection systems can be installed in mission critical systems, or I mean it is not that they will be installed only there, but suppose some vulnerable servers also, no problem in that, because they are very easy targets, right. So, at least that can be controlled, and hence the attack may not spread, that is what is required. The attack may, because network intrusion detection system may be a large system of entities. So, it may be quite costly to be installed in some network. So, instead you can have this HIDS at several places in the network, some vulnerable machines points, and then you can easily at least try to, I mean, find out and then take action. No, I am just telling you one of the, I mean, experiments that we did in our laboratory. So, we installed some sensors, PIR sensors, infrared sensors, okay, position infrared sensors, and some 2 cameras, okay. And I think this one is the door, this, and so anybody entering into the lab, I mean the sensors were placed in such a position that at least 2 sensors are able to capture the, I mean whatever differences in the IRs happen if somebody walks on, okay. And cameras were in that time, I think this is done some, this is 2013. So, we installed it in 2012. Okay. So, there not much fund was available. So, we could not give much cameras, only 2 cameras were there, I think at 2 ends like this. Okay. And the changes in the sensor readings when the person is walking, and after a bit walking, at least one camera could capture the image. So, all these 3 things triggered an SMS alert system to say that somebody is walking, and I mean somebody is there in the lab. So, it worked actually very fine, and it is really helpful for the office, after office hours, if some break in is there or something like that. So, these are these cameras, I think not cameras, sorry, sensors P4 and P5, and really they were all these results were taken then, and a paper has also been published, and it has got citations also, because not always I mean real life experiments are done, that is why. Though nowadays sensors do not cost anything, okay, you can really have a very well equipped sensor laboratory with different test beds, and these programs are very simple. You simply are detecting the, I mean noting the sensor data, seeing it with the pattern. When there is no people, when there is people, what is the change? You get the change and you simply alert. I mean of course, not in the first time, you have to somehow collaborate all the data, look for, say, monitor for a few seconds, then, and it is almost costless. I mean this is not CCTV or something like that, and you do not have to continuously monitor. I mean physical monitoring is not necessary, alert system is there. So, you are getting the alert, system administrator is getting the alert. So, no problem. So, this type of small experiments you can also perform in your laboratories. So, I think this much is for this session today.